desperate for shelter and stability. She never expected to meet a grieving billionaire, a silent boy, and a life she never imagined. But when false accusations threaten everything, how far will love go to protect its own? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Raina Ellis stared at the pile of bills on her kitchen table, each one stamped with red warnings she couldn't ignore much longer. Her fingers trembled as she sorted them into piles, urgent, more urgent, and impossible. The small apartment felt colder tonight, despite the summer heat pressing against the thin windows. "Mommy, I'm hungry," said Maya, her 6-year-old daughter, looking up from her coloring book with those big brown eyes that both broke Raina's heart and gave her strength. "I know, baby. Dinner's coming right up." Raina forced a smile and opened the refrigerator. Half a carton of milk, some eggs and bread that was just starting to get stale. She could make French toast. Maya loved that. It would have to do until payday, which was still 4 days away. As Maya ate, happily swinging her legs at the table, Raina scrolled through job listings on her phone. Her part-time receptionist job at the dental office wasn't enough, and her night shifts at the convenience store were being cut. She needed something stable, something that would let her be more present for Maya. That's when she saw it. Live-in childcare position. Discretion and kindness a must. Generous compensation. Immediate start possible. Raina's heart skipped. Live-in meant no rent, no utilities. It could be the answer to everything. "What are you looking at, Mummy?" Maya asked, syrup smeared on her chin. "Maybe a new job, sweetie. One where we could live in a bigger place." Raina wiped her daughter's face with a napkin. "Would you like that?" Maya nodded enthusiastically. "With a yard and maybe a dog." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Raina laughed. But inside she felt a tiny spark of hope, something she hadn't felt in a long time. That night, after tucking Maya into bed, Raina polished her resume and wrote a heartfelt cover letter. She had experience, not just as a mother, but from babysitting all through high school and working at a daycare during college, before life took an unexpected turn. Before Maya's father walked out on them when he learned Raina was pregnant, she sent the application, said a quiet prayer, and fell into an exhausted sleep. The call came 2 days later. "Ms. Ellis?" "This is Margaret Turner, assistant to Mr. Colin Mercer. Your application for the childcare position has been selected for an interview." Raina nearly dropped the phone. Colin Mercer, the name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. "The interview is tomorrow at 10 a.m. The address is 478 Lakeview Drive. Mr. Mercer will meet with you personally." After hanging up, Raina quickly searched the name online. Her stomach tightened when she saw the results. Colin Mercer, CEO of Mercer Biotech, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the country. A widower, a billionaire. "I don't have a chance," she whispered to herself, looking down at her worn jeans and the hole starting to form in her sneakers. But Maya's school photo smiled back at her from the coffee table, and Raina knew she had to try. The next morning, after dropping Maya at school, Raina put on her only dress, a simple navy blue one she'd bought for job interviews 3 years ago. She pinned her dark curly hair back neatly and applied a touch of mascara and lip gloss. It wasn't much, but it was the best she could do. The mansion took her breath away. It stood on top of a hill, modern and imposing with sharp angles and walls of glass. As the taxi pulled into the circular driveway, Raina felt increasingly out of place. A tall, stern-looking woman in her 50s opened the door before Raina could even knock. "Ms. Ellis, I'm Margaret Turner. Please come in." The inside of the house was even more intimidating. All sleek surfaces, expensive art, and stark white. Furniture that looked like no one ever sat on it. There were no family photos, no signs of the child she would be caring for. "Mr. Mercer will see you in his study. This way, please." Raina followed Margaret down a long hallway, her worn shoes silent on the plush carpet. She twisted her hands nervously, wondering what kind of man lived in such a cold, perfect place. Colin Mercer stood as she entered, and Raina's first thought was that his eyes matched the stormy sky outside, deep grey and unreadable. He was tall, dressed in an impeccable suit that probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. His dark hair was neatly trimmed, with just a touch of silver at the temples. "Ms. Ellis, please sit down." His voice was deep and measured, not warm, but not unkind either, just controlled. "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Mercer." Rayna sat on the edge of a leather chair, painfully aware of the contrast between them. "I've reviewed your application. Your experience is limited compared to other candidates." Rayna's heart sank, but she straightened her shoulders. "I understand that, sir. But what I lack in professional experience, I make up for in dedication and genuine care. I'm a mother myself." Something in his expression shifted, almost imperceptibly. "Yes, I see you have a daughter. 6 years old. Maya." "Yes." Rayna smiled, thinking of her little girl. "She's the center of my world." Colin nodded and folded his hands on the desk. "Ms. Ellis, I should be direct about what this position entails. My son Liam is 8 years old. He's experienced trauma. 3 years ago, his mother, my wife, died suddenly from an aneurysm. Liam was with her when it happened." Rayna's heart ached for the boy she hadn't even met yet. "I'm so sorry." "Since that night, Liam hasn't spoken. Not a word. We've tried therapists, specialists, nothing has helped." Colin's professional facade cracked slightly, revealing a glimpse of the pain underneath. "He's a bright boy. His teachers say he's keeping up with schoolwork, but he communicates only through writing and drawing. And the previous caregivers? 7 in 3 years. They tried to force progress, push him to talk, or they treated him like he was broken." Colin's jaw tightened. "My son is not broken, Ms. Ellis. He's grieving, and so am I." The raw honesty of his statement caught Rayna off guard. "I understand, Mr. Mercer, more than you might think." He studied her for a moment. "Would your daughter be living here as well?" "Yes. We're a package deal, I'm afraid." Rayna held her breath, sure this would be the end of her chances. To her surprise, Colin nodded. "That might actually be good for Liam. He's isolated, spends too much time alone." He stood up. "I'd like you to meet him before we make any decisions." Rayna followed Colin upstairs to a large playroom filled with toys that looked barely touched. A small boy sat at a table by the window, carefully constructing something with Legos. His dark hair fell over his forehead, and when he looked up, Rayna saw his father's grey eyes. "Liam, this is Ms. Ellis. She might be your new nanny." Colin's voice softened when he spoke to his son. Rayna didn't approach immediately. Instead, she knelt down where she was, bringing herself to Liam's eye level. "Hi, Liam. It's nice to meet you. That's quite a structure you're building there." The boy watched her carefully but didn't respond. There was no fear in his eyes, just caution and something else. A sadness no child should carry. "I have a daughter about your age. Her name is Maya. She loves Legos too, but she's not as good at building as you are." Rayna smiled gently. "Would it be okay if I sat with you for a bit?" Liam didn't nod, but he pushed a chair slightly toward her with his foot. Rayna took it as an invitation and sat down, not too close. "I like your tower. Is it a castle or a skyscraper?" Liam picked up a crayon and wrote on a notepad. "Space station." "Wow, that's amazing. Are those solar panels on the side?" The boy nodded, just once, and returned to his building. Rayna didn't push for more. She simply sat with him, occasionally commenting on his work, but mostly just being present. After about 10 minutes, Colin gestured for her to join him in the hallway. "Most candidates try too hard," he said quietly. "They bring gifts, ask too many questions, try to hug him within minutes of meeting him." "He needs space," Rayna replied simply. "And time." Colin studied her face. "The position includes a suite on the 3rd floor, 2 bedrooms, a private bathroom, full meals provided, weekends off unless previously arranged. The salary is $85,000 annually, with health insurance for both you and your daughter." Rayna couldn't hide her shock. That was more money than she'd ever made, more security than she'd ever had. "That's very generous. I can afford it, and Liam deserves the best care." Colin's expression remained neutral. "When can you start?" You're offering me the job? Just like that?" "Ms. Ellis, I've interviewed dozens of candidates. You're the first one." Liam didn't turn his back on. A hint of something, relief perhaps, crossed his face. "Can you start this weekend?" Raina thought of her tiny apartment with the leaking ceiling, the bills piling up, Maya's need for new school clothes. Yes, we can start Saturday. Good. Margaret will handle the paperwork and help you with the transition. As Raina left the mansion, her mind was spinning. Everything was about to change. For better or worse, she and Maya were about to enter a new world. Saturday morning came quickly. Raina and Maya stood at the front door of the Mercer mansion, their few belongings packed in mismatched suitcases. Maya clutched her favorite stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide with wonder at the massive house. "Is this really where we're going to live, Mommy?" she whispered. "For now, honey." Raina squeezed her daughter's hand. "Remember what we talked about? You'll need to be gentle with Liam. He doesn't talk, and that's okay." Maya nodded solemnly. "Because he's sad about his mommy. I'll be his friend, Mummy. I promise." Margaret opened the door, her usual stern expression softening slightly at the sight of Maya. "Welcome, Ms. Ellis, and you must be Maya. Mr. Mercer and Liam are waiting in the living room." Colin stood as they entered, looking slightly less intimidating. In dark jeans and a simple grey sweater, Liam sat on the couch, a book open on his lap. "Welcome to our home," Colin said formally. "Liam, Ms. Ellis and Maya have arrived." Liam looked up, his eyes immediately fixed on Maya and her stuffed rabbit. Maya took a small step forward. "Hi, Liam. I'm Maya. This is Mr. Hoppy." She held out her rabbit. "He doesn't talk either, but he's a good listener." A tense silence followed. Raina held her breath, worried that Maya had said the wrong thing. But then, to everyone's surprise, Liam slid off the couch and went to a nearby shelf. He returned with a small stuffed elephant and held it out toward Maya. "Is that your friend?" Maya asked with a smile. "What's his name?" Liam picked up his notepad and wrote, "Ellie." "That's a nice name. Can Ellie and Mr. Hoppy sit together?" Liam nodded, and the two children placed their stuffed animals side by side on the coffee table. Raina caught Colin's eye and saw something she hadn't seen before: hope. It flickered across his face briefly before he composed himself again. "Margaret will show you to your suite," he said. "Dinner is at 6. As they followed Margaret upstairs, Raina looked back to see Liam watching them go. For the briefest moment, she thought she saw him smile. The suite was beautiful, far nicer than anywhere Raina had ever lived. Maya ran from room to room exclaiming, over the big windows and the soft beds, "Mommy, there are new clothes in the closet and toys." Raina checked and found the closet filled with clothes in Maya's size, along with a shelf of books and games. Colin had thought of everything. That night, at dinner, the four of them sat at one end of a massive dining table. The silence was awkward at first, until Maya began chatting about her school and her friends, seemingly untroubled by the fact that Liam didn't speak. Colin answered her questions politely, if somewhat stiffly. Raina noticed how he watched his son, always alert for any change, any need. His love was evident in every glance, even if he rarely smiled. Later, after both children were in bed, Raina found Colin in his study, working despite the late hour. "Mr. Mercer, I just wanted to thank you. The suite is lovely, and the clothes for Maya were very thoughtful." He looked up from his computer. "Margaret handled all that, but you're welcome. And please call me Colin. This arrangement will work. Better with fewer formalities." Raina nodded. "Colin then, and I'm Raina. Is there anything else you need, Raina?" She hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "Just some guidance. What are your expectations? For Liam's care? For house rules?" Colin leaned back in his chair. "Liam needs stability, patience, someone who won't give up on him." He paused. "As for rules, they're simple. Discretion is paramount. Many people would love to publish stories about the billionaire's mute son. I won't have Liam turned into tabloid fodder." "Of course not. Otherwise, make yourself at home. My work keeps me busy, often late. Liam's schedule is on the refrigerator. School, therapy appointments. Beyond that, use your judgment." Raina nodded. "I understand." She turned to leave, then stopped. "He seems like a wonderful boy. Thoughtful." Something in Colin's expression softened. "He is. He always has been." That night, as Raina tucked Maya into her new bed, her daughter asked, "Are we going to be happy here, Mommy?" Raina looked around at the beautiful room. thought of the security this job offered, and then of the quiet boy and his grieving father. "I hope so, baby, I really hope so." As she closed Maya's door, Raina couldn't shake the feeling that she'd stepped into something far more complicated than just a job. She was now part of a household frozen in grief, with a man who buried himself in work and a child trapped in silence. And somehow she needed to help them both find their way back to life, without losing herself in the process. The first week in the Mercer mansion felt like walking on eggshells. Raina was careful not to disturb the careful order of the household. Margaret, the housekeeper, ran everything with military precision. Meals at exact times, the house spotless, not a thing out of place. But, as Raina observed, she realized that, while the house was perfect, it wasn't a home. There were no fingerprints on the glass doors, no magnets on the refrigerator, no shoes kicked off by the entryway. It was like a museum of loss, preserved exactly as it had been when Caroline Mercer was alive. On her 5th morning, Raina was preparing breakfast when Liam wandered into the kitchen, still in his pajamas. His hair was tousled from sleep, making him look younger than his 8 years. "Good morning, Liam," Raina smiled. "Hungry?" The boy nodded and climbed onto a bar stool at the kitchen island. He pushed his notepad toward her with a single word. "Pancakes?" "Pancakes it is," Raina agreed. "Want to help?" Liam hesitated, then nodded again. Raina pulled a sturdy chair next to the counter and patted it. "You can mix while I add the ingredients." She was showing him how to test if the griddle was hot enough by sprinkling water drops on it when Colin walked in, already dressed in a crisp suit despite it being Saturday. He stopped short at the sight of his son standing on a chair, wooden spoon in hand, face serious with concentration. "Good morning," Raina said, trying to read his expression. "We're making pancakes. Would you like some?" Colin seemed to struggle for words, his eyes fixed on Liam. Yes. That would be nice." He set his laptop down and sat at the island. "I don't remember the last time we made pancakes." Raina understood the unspoken words. "Not since Caroline died. Liam's a natural," she said lightly. "He's got the perfect pancake flip technique." As if on cue, Liam carefully flipped a pancake, his eyes lighting up when it landed perfectly. He glanced at his father, a hint of pride in his expression. Colin's face softened. "That looks great, buddy." Maya bounded in wearing her favorite unicorn pajamas. "Morning. Can I help too?" Soon all 4 of them were at the counter. Liam mixing batter, Maya adding blueberries, Raina cooking, and Colin, after removing his suit jacket and rolling up his sleeves, setting the table. It was chaotic and messy, and nothing like the usual. Quiet breakfasts in the Mercer household. When they finally sat down to eat, Colin looked around at the flour-dusted counters and the stack of misshapen pancakes. "Margaret's going to have a fit when she sees the kitchen." "I'll clean up," Raina promised. "It's worth a little mess for pancakes this good, right?" Maya nodded enthusiastically, her mouth full. Liam was carefully cutting his pancakes into identical triangles, but he was eating with better appetite than Raina had seen so far. Colin checked his watch. "I should get going. I have a meeting at 9. "On Saturday?" Raina couldn't help asking. A shadow crossed his face. "The company doesn't run itself." After he left, Raina helped the children clean up, making a game of it. When the kitchen was spotless again, she asked, "What would you two like to do today?" Maya immediately suggested the park, but Liam shook his head, looking uneasy. "That's okay," Raina said gently. "We can stay in. Maybe do some crafts." Liam wrote on his pad, "Dad's office, work." Raina frowned. "You work on Saturdays too?" He nodded, face serious, and wrote, "Important." "I see." Raina's heart ached. The boy was mimicking his father, retreating into work instead of play. "Well, before you get to your important work, would you show Maya your favorite books? She loves to read." Liam considered this, then nodded and led Maya to a bookshelf in the living room. Raina watched as he carefully selected several books and showed them to Maya, who responded with her usual enthusiasm. Over the next few days, Raina began making small, subtle changes. She put Maya's drawings on the refrigerator, with magnets shaped like animals. She brought fresh flowers for the kitchen table. She turned on music while making dinner, nothing too loud, just gentle background melodies. At first, Margaret frowned at these changes, her disapproval evident. But when Liam started lingering in the kitchen while Raina cooked, sometimes even helping, the housekeeper's attitude softened slightly. "He hasn't shown interest in much since," Margaret said one afternoon, watching Liam carefully tear lettuce. "For a salad. Sometimes we just need someone to make space for us," Raina replied quietly. "Not push, just allow." The following Tuesday, Raina was folding laundry in Liam's room while he worked on homework. She hummed softly as she worked, an old song her mother used to sing when Raina was a child. After a few minutes, she noticed Liam had stopped writing and was listening. She smiled at him, but kept folding, not making a big deal of it. When she finished the song, she started another, her voice a little stronger. Liam went back to his homework, but his pencil moved in rhythm with her singing. That evening, Colin came home earlier than usual and found them in the living room. Maya was teaching Liam a hand-clapping game, their laughter mixing together as they messed up the pattern again and again. "Dad," Maya spotted him first, "come learn this game with us." Colin stood frozen in the doorway, his briefcase still in hand. The sound of children's laughter in that room, after 3 years of silence, seemed to shock him. Liam looked up, his smile fading slightly as he watched his father's reaction. I don't know any hand-clapping games," Colin said awkwardly. "That's okay," Maya jumped up. "I can teach you. I taught Liam and he's super good now." Raina held her breath, watching Colin struggle with himself. Finally, he set down his briefcase and loosened his tie. "I might be terrible at it." "That's okay," Maya assured him, taking his hand and pulling him to the couch. "Mom's terrible too." "Hey," Raina laughed, relieved to see Colin sitting down, letting Maya place his hands in position. For the next 15 minutes, Colin Mercer, CEO of a billion-dollar company, solemnly practiced hand-clapping rhythms with his son and a 6-year-old girl. His movements were stiff at first, but gradually loosened as Maya's infectious giggles and Liam's silent but obvious amusement wore down his reserve. When they finally got the pattern right 3 times in a row, Maya cheered and high-fived both, Liam and Colin. The surprised pleasure on Colin's face when Liam high-fived him back made Raina's heart squeeze. "Who's hungry?" she asked, standing up. "I was thinking pasta for dinner." "With your special sauce?" Maya asked hopefully. "Of course." As they walked to the dining room, Colin fell in step beside Raina. "What just happened?" he asked quietly. "Hand-clapping games," she replied with a smile. "Very serious business." "No, I mean—" He struggled for words. "He was laughing. Liam was laughing." "Yes." Raina's voice softened. "He was." During dinner, Colin was more present than Raina had ever seen him. He asked Maya about school and actually listened to her rambling answers. He watched Liam with a new awareness, noticing how his son communicated with expressions and gestures when given the chance. After the children went to bed, Colin found Raina in the kitchen making lunch boxes for tomorrow. "Thank you," he said. "Simply." Raina looked up, surprised. "For what?" "For whatever you're doing, it's helping." He ran a hand through his hair, messing up its perfect styling. "I've tried everything. Therapists, specialists, even a child psychologist who specializes in selective mutism. Nothing worked. I'm not doing anything special," Raina said honestly. "Just giving him space to be who he is right now, not who he was before or who we want him to be." Colin was quiet for a moment. "I don't know how to do that. I keep waiting for him to go back to the way he was. The boy who never stopped talking, who had an opinion on everything." "That boy is still there," Raina said gently, "but he's also changed. We all change after loss." Colin's eyes met hers, and for the first time Raina saw past the controlled exterior to the pain underneath. Do we change, or do we just pretend and go through the motions? The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. "In my experience," Raina said carefully, "we do both for a while, and then one day we realize we're not pretending anymore. We've built something new around the hole that will always be there." Colin nodded slowly. "You speak from experience. Different circumstances, but yes." Raina closed Maya's lunchbox. "When Maya's father left, I thought I'd never feel whole again. She was the only thing that kept me going. And then one day, I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. How long did that take? Raina smiled sadly. I'm still working on it, but it gets easier. A week later, Raina was sorting laundry when she found a drawing tucked into the pocket of Liam's jeans. It showed 3 stick figures, one tall, one small, and one in the middle. They were holding hands. She set it aside to give back to Liam. But that night she found it on her bedside table. He had left it for her on purpose. Raina cried in the hallway, overwhelmed by what that simple drawing meant. She was wiping her eyes when she heard a door open. Colin stood there in his pajamas, concern on his face. Raina, what's wrong? She wordlessly handed him the drawing. Colin studied it, his brow furrowed. It's us, he said finally. Me, Liam, and you. Yes. Raina's voice was barely a whisper. Something shifted in Colin's expression, a softening, a cracking of the careful control he always maintained. He's letting you in. He's letting us both in, Raina corrected gently. He doesn't want to be alone anymore, and I don't think you do either. Colin's hand trembled slightly as he handed the drawing back. Their fingers brushed and neither pulled away immediately. I should check on the children, Raina said finally. Colin nodded. Good night, Raina. Good night, Colin. As the weeks passed, life at the Mercer mansion began to change. Small things at first. Family dinners became the norm rather than the exception. Colin started coming home earlier. The stark white furniture required colorful throw pillows and soft blankets. Maya's and Liam's artwork appeared on the walls of the kitchen and playroom. Raina found herself looking forward to the quiet moments after the children were in bed, when she and Colin would have a cup of tea in the kitchen and talk about their days. He told her about his company, the pressure of running it since Caroline's death, the weight of being solely responsible for everything. She shared stories of Maya's early years, her dreams of going back to school someday, her love of teaching. They carefully avoided personal questions, keeping a professional distance despite the growing warmth between them. But Raina couldn't help noticing how Colin's eyes followed her around the room, or how his rare smile seemed to appear more often when she was near. One evening, Raina found Liam sitting alone in the garden, looking at the stars. She sat beside him on the bench, not speaking, just sharing the moment. After a while, he wrote on his pad, "Do you like my dad?" The question caught her off guard. "Of course I do. He's a good man." Liam gave her a look that clearly said he meant more than that. He wrote again, "Dad smiles now because of you." "I think that's because of you, Liam," Raina said gently. "You're smiling more too." The boy considered this, then wrote, "Mom would like you." Raina's throat tightened with emotion. "That's a very kind thing to say. I wish I could have met her." Liam nodded solemnly, then stood up and gave Raina a quick, awkward hug before running back inside. She sat there for a long time, looking at the stars and wondering how she had come to care so deeply for this broken little family in such a short time. The next day, Raina was helping Maya with her reading when the doorbell rang. Margaret answered it, then came to find Raina. "There's someone here to see Mr. Mercer, his sister-in-law, Mrs. Diana Reynolds." Before Raina could respond, a tall, elegant woman swept into the room. She had Caroline's blonde hair and blue eyes. Raina recognized her from photos around the E. "How so it's true?" Diana said, her gaze cold as it swept over Raina and Maya. "Colin has hired a replacement." "Diana," Colin appeared in the doorway, his face tight. "I wasn't expecting you." Clearly, Diana's smile was brittle. "I had to hear from Marianne at the club that you have a woman living in the house." "With her?" "Child? Raina is Liam's nanny," Colin said firmly, "and this is her daughter, Maya." Diana's eyes narrowed as she looked at Maya. "And where is my nephew? Has she taken over his care completely now?" "I'm right here, Aunt Diana," Liam wrote on a sheet of paper, coming to stand beside Raina. Diana softened slightly at the sight of him. "Liam, darling, I've missed you. You haven't come to visit in weeks." Liam shrugged, not meeting her eyes. "Maya," Raina said quietly, "why don't you and Liam go upstairs for a bit?" The children left reluctantly, Liam looking back with worry in his eyes. "Diana, let's talk in my study," Colin said, his tone leaving no room for argument. As they left, Diana's voice carried back, sharp with accusation. What would Caroline think, Colin, replacing her so quickly with someone like that? Raina's cheeks burned with humiliation. She busied herself straightening the books on the table, trying to ignore the muffled sounds of raised voices from the study. After what seemed like forever, the study door opened and Diana stormed out, not even glancing at Raina as she left. The front door slammed behind her. Colin appeared a moment later, his face drawn with tension. I apologize for Diana. She was very close to Caroline and hasn't handled her death well. It's okay, Raina said, though it wasn't. She's protective of her sister's memory, I understand. No, it's not okay. Colin ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Raina now recognized as a sign of stress. She had no right to speak to you that way. What did she mean about replacing Caroline? Raina asked quietly. Colin looked away. Diana has convinced herself that we're... He sighed heavily. She thinks there's something inappropriate happening between us. Raina's heart skipped, though she kept her face carefully neutral. I see. I told her she was being ridiculous, that our relationship is strictly professional. Colin's eyes met hers, and something unspoken passed between them. But she's threatening to make trouble. She mentioned custody. Raina felt cold. Of Liam, she can't do that. Probably not, but she can make things difficult. Create rumors, scandal. The last thing Liam needs is to see his name in the tabloids. What do you want me to do? Raina asked, her voice steady despite the fear growing inside her. She couldn't bear the thought of leaving, of taking Maya away from Liam, of never seeing Colin again. Nothing, Colin said firmly. You haven't done anything wrong. Diana will calm down eventually. But Raina knew it wasn't that simple. She'd seen the look in Diana's eyes, the judgment, the disapproval, and worse, the determination. Maybe we should be more careful, she suggested. Keep more distance. Colin stepped closer. Is that what you want? No, Raina admitted, her voice barely audible. But I don't want to cause problems for you or Liam. For a moment they stood there, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Then Colin's phone rang, breaking the tension. I have to take this, he said reluctantly, checking the screen. It's the office. As he walked away, Raina leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. She had come here for a job, for security, for a better life for Maya. She hadn't expected to find herself caught in the middle of a grieving family's complex dynamics, or to develop feelings for a man still haunted by his past. And she certainly hadn't expected someone like Diana to see her as a threat. That night, Raina couldn't sleep. She kept hearing Diana's words, seeing the contempt in her eyes. Someone like that. The implication was clear. Raina wasn't good enough, wasn't in their social class, wasn't worthy of taking Caroline's place, even just as Liam's caregiver. She got up and went to check on Maya, smiling at the sight of her daughter sleeping peacefully, surrounded by the comfort and security Raina had always wanted to provide. I'm doing this for you, she whispered, brushing a curl from Maya's forehead. Everything is for you. But as she returned to her own room, Raina couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Her feelings for Colin and Liam had grown beyond professional boundaries. She cared for them deeply, and not just because they were her employers. The realization filled her with both joy and dread. Joy because, for the first time in years, she felt truly alive again. Dread because she knew that loving them could cost her everything she had worked so hard to build. As dawn broke over the Mercer mansion, Raina made a decision. She would protect her heart, keep her feelings hidden, and focus on what mattered most, giving Maya the stable home she deserved and helping Liam find his voice again. But even as she promised herself this, Raina knew it might already be too late. The weeks following Diana's visit were tense. Though she didn't return to the house, her presence lingered like a storm cloud on the horizon. Colin had more phone calls behind closed doors, and occasionally Raina would catch him looking, troubled after checking his emails. Despite this, life in the Mercer home continued to improve. Liam was making progress in small but significant ways. He started joining other children during recess at school instead of sitting alone. His teacher reported that he was using his notepad to communicate with classmates, not just adults. Most importantly, the bond between Liam and Maya grew stronger each day. They had developed their own little language of gestures and notes, and Maya seemed to understand Liam's needs without him having to write them down. One rainy Saturday afternoon, Raina was helping the children build a blanket fort in the playroom. When Colin appeared in the doorway, "What's going on in here?" he asked, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, a sign he'd been working from home. "We're building protection against the mountain trolls," Maya explained seriously. "They come out when it rains," Colin raised an eyebrow. "Mountain trolls, huh?" Liam nodded and wrote on his pad, "They're afraid of blanket forts." "Of course they are," Colin said, his lips twitching with amusement. "Well, this fort seems a bit unstable on the left side. You might need some engineering assistance." Maya's eyes widened. "You want to help? If that's okay with the master builders." Liam's face lit up as he nodded enthusiastically. For the next hour, Colin Mercer, who usually spent his weekends on conference calls, crawled around on the floor helping his son construct what became an elaborate network of blanket tunnels and pillow rooms. His phone rang twice, but he silenced it without checking who was calling. Raina watched from the sidelines, her heart full. This was what Liam needed. His father's undivided attention, the chance to just be a kid. When the fort was finished, they all crawled inside with flashlights and cookies that Raina had baked earlier. In the dim, cozy space, Colin sat with his back against the couch, Liam leaning against his side. "This reminds me of when I was a boy," Colin said, his voice softer than usual. "My brother and I used to build forts like this during storms." "You have a brother?" Maya asked, surprised. "Had," Colin corrected gently. "He passed away when I was in college." Raina watched his face in the flashlight glow, seeing a vulnerability he rarely showed. "What was his name?" she asked quietly. "Thomas. Tommy." Colin smiled at the memory. "He was younger than me, but braver. Always up for an adventure." Liam tugged on his father's sleeve and wrote, "Like me and Maya." "Yes, a bit like that," Colin agreed, wrapping an arm around his son's shoulders. "Though Tommy was the troublemaker, always getting us into messes that I had to get us out of." For the first time, Raina saw Colin talk about someone he'd lost with warmth instead of pain. It gave her hope that perhaps he was beginning to heal. Later, after the children were in bed, Raina found Colin in the kitchen making tea. "Would you like some?" he offered, holding up a second mug. "Thank you." She took the mug, their fingers, brushing briefly. "I wanted to say that was really nice today, what you did with the fort." Colin leaned against the counter. "I can't remember the last time I did something that frivolous. It felt good." "It's not frivolous to spend time with your son," Raina said gently. "I know." Colin stared into his tea. "I've always thought that providing for him, making sure his future was secure, that was my most important job as a father, especially after Caroline." He trailed off, then looked up at Raina. "But you've shown me there's more to it than that." "I haven't done anything special," Raina insisted. "I just listened to him." "You listen to both of us," Colin said quietly. "That's rarer than you might think in my world." The moment stretched between them, filled with things neither was ready to say. Finally, Colin broke the silence. "Diana called again today." Raina's stomach tightened. "What did she want?" "She's invited Liam to spend next weekend at her house. Her son will be visiting, Caroline's nephew Jack. He's a year older than Liam, and they used to be close." "That sounds nice," Raina said carefully. "Does Liam want to go?" Colin sighed. "I'm not sure. He and Jack haven't seen each other in almost a year. Diana got upset after Caroline died. She said some things in front of Liam that scared him." "What kind of things?" "She blamed me," Colin said, his voice flat. "Said I worked too much, that I should have noticed Caroline wasn't feeling well, that if I'd been home more, maybe Caroline would have gone to the doctor sooner." Raina's heart ached for him. That wasn't fair. Maybe not. But sometimes I wonder if she was right. Colin set down his mug with a sharp click. "The doctor said the aneurysm could have been detected with the right tests. If I'd been paying attention instead of focusing on a merger—" "You can't do that to yourself," Raina said firmly. "You couldn't have known." Colin's eyes met hers, filled with an old grief. Couldn't I? Caroline had been having headaches for weeks. She mentioned feeling dizzy a few times, but I was distracted, and she didn't want to worry me. Raina reached out and touched his arm. Colin, that doesn't make her death your fault. He covered her hand with his own, holding it against his arm. Logically, I know that. But logic doesn't help much at 3 in the morning when I can't sleep. They stood like that for a long moment, connected by touch and shared understanding. Then Colin gently released her hand. It's late. We should both get some rest. Good night, Colin, Raina said softly. Good night, Raina, and thank you. The next morning at breakfast, Colin asked Liam about visiting Diana. The boy's face immediately closed off and he shook his head firmly. Buddy, I know you and Aunt Diana haven't spent much time together lately, but she misses you. And Jack, we'll be there, Liam wrote quickly. Don't want to go. Colin exchanged a glance with Raina, who was helping Maya with her cereal. Can you tell me why not? Liam hesitated, then wrote, She's mean about you. Colin's face softened. Liam, that's not something you need to worry about. Aunt Diana and I have our differences, but we both love you. Liam scribbled again. She doesn't like Raina and Maya. Well, Colin said carefully, she doesn't know them very well yet. Liam's expression was stubborn as he wrote, Still don't want to go. How about this? Raina suggested. What if you went just for an afternoon instead of the whole weekend? Maybe Sunday lunch? Liam considered this, then slowly nodded. I'll call Diana and arrange it, Colin said, relief evident in his voice. Thank you, he added quietly to Raina. The following Sunday, Colin took Liam to Diana's house for lunch. Raina spent the afternoon helping Maya with a school project, trying not to worry about how the visit was going. They returned earlier than expected. Colin's face was tight with anger, and Liam went straight to his room without acknowledging anyone. What happened? Raina asked, following Colin into his study. He paced the room, tension radiating from him. Diana happened. Everything was fine at first. Jack and Liam were playing video games, catching up. Then at lunch, Diana started asking Liam questions about you. Raina's stomach dropped. What kind of questions? Whether you take good care of him, whether you talk about Caroline, whether I spend time with you when the children are asleep. Colin's jaw clenched. She was pumping him for information, making implications a child shouldn't have to understand. What did Liam do? He got upset, knocked over his glass and ran from the table. Colin stopped pacing and looked at Raina, his eyes troubled. Diana followed him, trying to apologize. But then she said something about how she was just worried about him, because his father was too busy with his new girlfriend to notice if Liam was unhappy. Raina felt sick. She called me your girlfriend in front of Liam? Yes. I lost my temper. Colin ran a hand through his hair. I told her she was being inappropriate and damaging her relationship with Liam. She accused me of replacing Caroline. Too quickly and... He stopped. And what? Raina asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. She said Caroline would be heartbroken to see another woman mothering her son, especially someone not of our social standing. The words hit Raina like a slap. She'd known Diana looked down on her, but hearing it stated so boldly hurt more than she'd expected. I see, she said quietly. She thinks I'm not good enough for your family. Raina. Oh, Colin moved closer, his voice urgent. Diana is a snob who's stuck in the past. What you've done for Liam, for both of us, has nothing to do with social standing or money. But she's right about one thing, Raina said, forcing herself to meet his eyes. I'm not Caroline. I'll never be Caroline. And maybe it's not fair to Liam to have me here confusing things. You're not confusing anything, Colin insisted. You're helping him heal, helping both of us heal. Am I? Raina asked softly. Or am I just a distraction from the grief you haven't fully faced? Colin stared at her, and for a moment Raina thought she'd gone too far. Then he simply said, You should check on Liam. He was asking for you in the car. Raina nodded and left, both relieved and disappointed that Colin hadn't answered her question. She found Liam in his room, lying on his bed and staring at the ceiling. When he saw her, he immediately sat up and grabbed his notepad. Are you okay? She asked, sitting beside him. He wrote quickly, Are you going to leave? The question broke Raina's heart. Why would you think that? Liam's handwriting was messier than usual, betraying his agitation. Aunt Diana said Dad would make you leave when he gets tired of you, like the other nannies. Oh, Liam. Raina gently touched his hair. I'm not planning to go anywhere. Your aunt was upset and said things she shouldn't have. Liam looked at her searchingly, then wrote, Promise? Raina hesitated. She couldn't make promises she might not be able to keep. Diana was already causing problems, and if she continued, Colin might decide it was better for everyone if Raina and Maya left. I promise I won't leave without saying goodbye, she said finally. And I promise that no matter what happens, you can always reach out to me. It wasn't the answer Liam wanted, but he nodded, accepting it. He wrote again, Dad likes you, I can tell. Raina felt her cheeks warm. We work well together. Taking care of you. Liam gave her a look that was far too knowing for an 8-year-old. Then he wrote, It's okay. Mom would want him to be happy again. Tears pricked at Raina's eyes. You're a very special boy, Liam Mercer. Your mom would be so proud of you. Later that evening, Raina was folding laundry in her room when there was a gentle knock at the door. She opened it to find Colin standing there looking uncertain. May I come in for a moment? He asked. Raina nodded, suddenly conscious of her. Worn pajama pants and faded t-shirt. Is everything okay? I wanted to apologize, Colin said, remaining near the door, for Diana's behavior and for not defending you more strongly. You don't need to apologize for her, Raina said. And Liam told me you left right after she made those comments. I did. But I should have made it clearer to her that you are a valued and respected member of this household. Colin's gaze was intense. Because you are, Raina, more than you know. Raina's heart beat faster at his words. Thank you, that means a lot. Colin glanced around the room, taking in the few personal touches Raina had added. A photo of Maya as her baby, a small potted plant, a stack of library books on the nightstand. You know, he said quietly, I realized something today. When Diana was saying all those terrible things, I wasn't just angry. I was afraid. Afraid of what? That she might succeed in driving you away. Colin met her eyes again. The thought of you and Maya leaving, it terrified me. Raina couldn't breathe. They were approaching a line that, once crossed, would change everything. Colin, she began, but he held up a hand. You don't need to say anything. I just wanted you to know. He turned to leave, then paused. Good night, Raina. Good night, she whispered as the door closed behind him. Raina sat on the edge of her bed, her mind spinning. Colin's words echoed in her head. The thought of you and Maya leaving terrified me. What did that mean? That he valued her as Liam's caregiver? Or was it something more, and what about her own feelings? The warmth that flooded her whenever Colin smiled at her. The way her heart leapt when he entered a room. The deep contentment she felt when the four of them were together. This was more than appreciation for a good employer. Much more. But there were so many complications. Diana's hostility, the gulf between their backgrounds, Colin's lingering grief, and, most importantly, the children. If Raina allowed herself to fall for Colin and things went wrong, it wouldn't just be her heart at risk. Maya had grown attached to Liam and to their new home, and Liam, just beginning to heal, would face another. Loss the stakes were impossibly high. The next morning at breakfast, Colin announced he had to go to Chicago for 3 days on business. It's an important meeting with potential investors, he explained, not quite meeting Raina's eyes. I've been putting it off, but I can't delay any longer. Liam looked disappointed, but wrote, It's okay. Raina and Maya will be here. That's right, Colin said, smiling at his son, and I'll call every night before bedtime. After Colin left for the airport, life in the Mercer house fell into a quieter rhythm. Raina helped the children with homework, made their favorite meals and read stories before bed. But she couldn't deny that the house felt different without Colin's presence. On the second evening, she was surprised to receive a text from him. How is everyone doing? She replied, All good here. Liam had a great day at school. His teacher says he's participating more in group activities. A moment later, That's wonderful. And how are you? Raina hesitated before answering. Fine. The house is quiet without you. His response came quickly. I miss you all too. Those simple words made Raina's heart race. She stared at her phone, unsure how to respond. Before she could decide, another text came through. I've been thinking about our conversation the other night. Raina took a deep breath and typed, So have I. We should talk when I get back. Properly. Yes, I think we should. Good night, Raina. Good night. Colin! She set her phone down, both excited and terrified by the possibilities those messages suggested. The next day, Raina was helping Maya with her math homework when the doorbell rang. Margaret answered it, then came to find Raina, her expression troubled. Ms. Ellis, there's someone here to see you. A Ms. Charlotte Wilson from Child Protective Services. Raina's blood ran cold. What? Why? She says she received a complaint and needs to speak with you immediately. Raina hurried to the entryway, where a stern-looking woman in a grey suit waited, clipboard in hand. Ms. Ellis, I'm Charlotte Wilson from CPS. We received an anonymous complaint about the welfare of a child in this home. What complaint? Raina asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The children are fine. They're upstairs doing homework. The complaint specifically mentions inappropriate behavior between you and your employer, creating an unhealthy environment for the children. Ms. Wilson's expression was neutral, but her eyes were sharp. I'll need to speak with both children privately and then with you. Raina felt sick. Of course, but can I ask who made this complaint? As I said, it was anonymous, but very detailed. Ms. Wilson glanced at her notes. It alleges that you've been involved romantically with Mr. Mercer while neglecting your childcare duties, and that Mr. Mercer's son has been distressed by this situation. Raina didn't need to be told who was behind this. Diana had made good on her threats. That's completely false, Raina said firmly. There has been no inappropriate behavior, and both children are thriving. You can see for yourself. For the next 2 hours, Ms. Wilson interviewed Maya and Liam separately, then toured the house and spoke at length with Raina. Though professional, her questions were invasive and uncomfortable, forcing Raina to defend her relationship with Colin again and again. When she finally left, promising to file her report within a week, Raina collapsed onto the couch, drained and humiliated. Who was that lady? Maya asked, climbing next to her mother. She asked weird questions. Just someone making sure you and Liam are happy here, Raina said, pulling her daughter close. I told her we are, Maya said proudly. I told her Liam is my best friend and Colin makes pancakes with us on Saturdays, and you smile more now than you used to. Raina kissed the top of Maya's head, tears threatening. Thank you, baby. That night, after the children were asleep, Raina called Colin. He answered immediately as if he'd been waiting for her call. Raina, is everything okay? She took a deep breath. There was a CPS worker here today. Someone made a complaint about us. What? Colin's voice sharpened with anger. Diana. I think so. The complaint alleged inappropriate behavior between us, neglect of the children. Raina's voice trembled. They interviewed Maya and Liam. I'm coming home, Colin said immediately. I'll book the first flight out in the morning. No, Colin, your meeting can wait. This is more important. His voice softened. Are you okay? I'm embarrassed and angry. Raina took a shaky breath. But mostly I'm worried about what this means for Liam, for all of us. It means Diana has crossed a line, Colin said grimly, and she's going to regret it. Raina spent a restless night, her mind filled with worst-case scenarios. What if CPS determined she was an unfit caregiver? What if they decided the situation was inappropriate? What if she and Maya had to leave? The thought of leaving the Mercer house, of leaving Liam and Colin, felt like a physical pain in her chest. Morning came too quickly. Raina was making breakfast, putting on a brave face for the children, when she heard the front door open. Colin appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking tired from his early flight, but determined. Dad! Liam jumped up from the table and ran to his father, wrapping his arms around him in a rare show of physical affection. Colin hugged him back tightly. Hey, buddy, I missed you. Colin. Maya joined the hug, and for a moment, The three of them stood together. Raina watched, her throat tight with emotion. They looked like a family, the family she had begun to hope they might become. Colin's eyes met hers over the children's heads, filled with a warmth that made her heart skip. "I missed you too," he said quietly. After breakfast, Colin called Diana, while Raina took the children to school. When she returned, she found him in his study, his expression grim. "How did it go?" she asked from the doorway. She denied making the complaint, of course. Colin's voice was tight with anger. But she didn't deny thinking about it. She says she's worried about Liam. "And what did you tell her?" "That if she ever interferes with my family again, she'll regret it." Colin's eyes were hard. "I've instructed my lawyers to prepare a cease and desist letter, and if necessary, we'll file for a restraining order." Raina was stunned by the forcefulness of his response. "Colin, she's your late wife's sister. Are you sure you want to take such drastic steps?" "I'm protecting what matters to me," he said simply. "Diana needs to understand that." There was something in his tone, a possessiveness, a certainty, that both thrilled and frightened Raina. "What matters to you?" she asked softly. Colin stood and crossed the room to her. "You know what matters to me, Raina. You, Maya, Liam, the family we've become." Raina's heart pounded as he took her hands in his. "Is that what we are, a family?" "It's what I want us to be," Colin said, his voice low and sincere. "If you want that too." Before Raina could answer, the study phone rang. Colin reluctantly released her hands to answer it. "Hello?" "Yes, this is Colin Mercer." His expression changed, becoming concerned. "Yes, she works for me." "What?" "No, that's not right. There must be some mistake." Raina watched anxiously as Colin's frown deepened. "I see. No, I understand. We'll cooperate fully, of course." He hung up and turned to Raina, his face pale. "That was Charlotte Wilson's supervisor at CPS. They've received new information. Allegations that you misrepresented your background on your application, that you have a criminal record you didn't disclose." Raina stared at him in shock. "What?" "That's not true." "I know," Colin said quickly, "but they're opening a formal investigation. And until it's resolved, they're recommending that you not be left alone with Liam." The room seemed to tilt under Raina's feet. "This is Diana again. She's trying to force me out." "Yes," Colin agreed grimly. "And she's playing very dirty." "What do we do now?" Raina asked, fear and anger mingling inside her. Colin's expression was determined. "We fight back. I didn't build a billion-dollar company by backing down from a challenge." He took her hands again. "I won't let her take you away from us, Raina. I promise." As Raina looked into his eyes, she wanted desperately to believe him, but a cold fear had settled in her stomach. Diana was willing to use government agencies, to make false accusations, to potentially damage Raina's reputation permanently. And the worst part was, Raina wasn't sure she was worth fighting for. She was just a single mother who had been scraping by, who had lucked into this job, this life. Maybe Diana was right. Maybe she didn't belong in Colin's world. "Raina?" Colin's voice broke into her thoughts. "Talk to me." "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not just of Diana, but of what this could do to Liam, to Maya. If this turns ugly—" "We won't let it get that far," Colin promised. "I have resources, connections. We'll clear your name quickly." Raina wanted to believe him. She wanted to fall into his arms and trust that he could fix everything. But a lifetime of disappointment had taught her that happy endings were rare, especially for women like her. "And if you can't?" she asked quietly. "If Diana keeps escalating?" Colin's jaw set stubbornly. "Then we'll face it together." Together. Such a simple word, but it held such power. Raina looked at the man standing before her, strong, determined, and looking at her like she was something precious, and felt hope flickering to life again. "Together," she repeated, and for the first time allowed herself to lean into his strength, to believe that maybe, just maybe, love could win against all odds. The next 2 weeks were the most stressful of Raina's life. Despite Colin's promise to handle everything, the investigation into her background cast a shadow over the household. Margaret had been instructed to supervise whenever Raina was with Liam, an arrangement that humiliated Raina and confused the children. "Why does Margaret have to be with us all the time?" Maya asked one afternoon as they played a board game in the living room, the housekeeper knitting quietly in the corner. "It's just temporary," Raina assured her, though her smile felt strained. "Sometimes grown-ups have to follow silly rules." Liam wrote on his pad, "Is it because of Aunt Diana?" Raina hesitated, not wanting to lie, but also not wanting to burden the children with adult problems. "It's complicated, sweetie, but Colin, your dad, is working to fix it." That was true. Colin had hired a team of lawyers and private investigators to fight the false allegations. He'd also arranged for character witnesses, Raina's former employers, Maya's teachers, even the owner of the convenience store where she'd worked night shifts. But bureaucracy moved slowly, and in the meantime, the strain was taking its toll. Raina noticed Colin working later each night, the pressure evident in the tightness around his eyes. He'd put on a brave face for the children, but when they were alone, his worry was palpable. One evening, after the children were asleep, Raina found him in his study, surrounded by legal papers. "Any progress?" she asked, setting a cup of tea on his desk. Colin rubbed his eyes wearily. "Some. My investigator confirmed the complaint came from a burner phone, but he traced it to a coffee shop near Diana's house. It's circumstantial, but it helps." Raina sat in the chair across from him. "I've been thinking about this, Colin. Maybe I should take Maya and stay somewhere else until this is resolved. It would be simpler." "No." His response was immediate and firm. "That's exactly what Diana wants. If you leave, even temporarily, it could be seen as an admission of guilt. But this situation isn't fair to the children. Liam doesn't understand why Margaret follows us everywhere, and Maya keeps asking if we've done something wrong." Colin's expression softened. "I know it's hard, but we're close to resolving this. The background check came back clean, as we knew. It would. Now we just need to prove malicious intent on Diana's part." Raina twisted her hands in her lap. "Even if we prove that, it won't change how she feels. She'll always see me as an intruder, someone taking Caroline's place." "You're not taking anyone's place," Colin said gently. "You're creating your own." His words warmed her heart, but Raina couldn't shake her doubts. "What if this never ends, Colin? What if Diana keeps finding ways to interfere? I don't want Liam caught in the middle of a war between the adults who should be protecting him. I won't let that happen." Colin stood and came around the desk, kneeling in front of her chair. "Raina, do you know what Liam's therapist told me? Yesterday. She said he's making more progress now than in the past 3 years combined. Because of you. Because for the first time since Caroline died, he feels safe and understood." Tears filled Raina's eyes. "He's an amazing boy." "Yes, he is." Colin took her hands in his. "And he deserves to be happy, so do you, so do I." He paused, his grey eyes intense. "I know the timing is terrible with everything that's happening, but I need you to know how I feel." Raina's heart pounded. "Colin, I love you," he said simply. "I think I've been falling in love with you since the first time I saw you with Liam, treating him with such gentle respect." A tear slipped down Raina's cheek. "I love you too," she whispered, "but I'm scared for us, for the children." Colin brushed the tear away with his thumb. "I know, so am I, but we're stronger together than apart." He leaned forward and kissed her, softly at first, then with growing intensity. Raina melted into him, all her doubts momentarily forgotten in the rightness of his embrace. When they finally pulled apart, Colin rested his forehead against hers. "We'll figure this out, I promise." Raina wanted desperately to believe him, but as she went to bed that night, her mind filled with worries. Loving Colin complicated everything. It validated Diana's accusations, even if the timeline was wrong. And what if the investigation didn't go their way? What if she was deemed unfit to care for Liam? Would Colin still want her then? Or would her presence become too complicated, too damaging to his son's stability? Sleep eluded her, and eventually Raina got up and went to check on Maya. Her daughter slept peacefully, clutching the stuffed rabbit that had been her constant companion since babyhood. Next, Raina peeked into Liam's room, finding comfort in the gentle rise and fall of his chest. These children, so different yet both so precious, had become the center of her world. The thought of losing either of them was unbearable. As Raina turned to leave, she noticed something on Liam's desk, a drawing. Curious, she moved closer. It showed 4 stick figures holding hands. Above them, Liam had written, "My family," in careful letters. Tears filled Raina's eyes again. Whatever happened with the investigation, with Diana, with the complications of adult relationships, this simple truth remained. They had become a family, and family was worth fighting for. The next morning, Raina was helping Maya get ready for school when Margaret appeared at the door, her expression unusually troubled. "Ms. Ellis, Mr. Mercer would like to see you in his study immediately. I'll finish helping Maya." Raina's stomach clenched with anxiety. "Is everything okay?" "I think you should speak with Mr. Mercer," Margaret replied, not meeting her eyes. Colin was on the phone when Raina entered the study, his face tight with anger. He gestured for her to sit down as he finished the call. "I don't care what it takes. Fix it." He hung up and turned to Raina, taking a deep breath. "We have a problem." "What's happened?" Raina asked, her voice small. "Diana has escalated things. She's filed for emergency custody of Liam, claiming I'm unfit to parent him." Raina gasped. "She can't do that. She's trying. Her petition cites my inappropriate relationship with you, claims I'm neglecting Liam's grief counseling, and says I've cut him off from his maternal relatives." Colin's jaw clenched. "It's all lies, but the court has granted a preliminary hearing next week." Raina felt sick. "This is my fault if I wasn't here." "Stop," Colin said firmly. "This is not your fault. Diana has been trying to control Liam's life since Caroline died. She thinks she knows better than everyone, especially me. But she's using our relationship as ammunition," Raina pointed out. "She's not completely wrong, Colin. Things have changed. Between us." "Yes, they have." Colin's expression softened. "But that doesn't make me an unfit father or you an unfit caregiver." He reached across the desk for her hand. "My lawyers will fight this. They're confident we'll win." "And in the meantime?" Raina asked. Colin hesitated. "In the meantime, we need to be careful. The court has appointed a guardian ad litem to assess Liam's home situation. They'll be interviewing everyone in the household, observing our interactions with Liam." Raina understood what he wasn't saying. They needed to be professional, to keep their feelings hidden. "When does this start?" "The guardian is coming tomorrow. Her name is Judith Blake. She'll be spending several hours here and then she'll return for follow-up visits." Raina nodded, her mind racing. Would it be better if Maya and I moved to a hotel until after the hearing?" Colin considered. This clearly torn. "My lawyers actually suggested that. They think it might simplify the narrative, but..." He shook his head. "I can't ask you to do that, and I think it would upset Liam even more. He's already picking up on the tension around here." "What do you want to do?" Raina asked softly. Colin met her eyes. "I want you to stay. We'll be careful, professional in front of the guardian. But I won't pretend you're not an important part of this household, of our lives." His conviction gave Raina strength. "Then we'll face this together." That night, Raina explained to Maya in simple terms that a special visitor would be coming to watch them for a few days. "Like a babysitter for grown-ups?" Maya asked, confused. Raina smiled despite her worry. "Sort of. She's making sure everyone in the house is happy and getting along well." "But we are happy," Maya insisted, "except when you and Colin look sad when you think no one's watching." Sometimes Raina forgot how perceptive children could be. "We're just dealing with some adult problems, honey. Nothing for you to worry about." But as she tucked Maya in, Raina wondered if they were handling this right. Should she take Maya somewhere else until the custody issue was resolved? Was staying making things worse? These questions kept her awake long into the night. Judith Blake arrived promptly at 9 a.m. the next day. She was a tall, no-nonsense woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked black hair and keen eyes that missed nothing. She interviewed Colin first, then Raina, asking detailed questions about the household routine, Liam's care, and their respective roles. "Ms. Ellis," she said toward the end of their session, I understand there have been allegations about the nature of your relationship with Mr. Mercer. Raina took a deep breath. Yes, and those allegations have complicated what was originally a straightforward employment arrangement. And how would you characterize your relationship now? Raina chose her words carefully. Mr. Mercer and I have developed a mutual respect and a shared commitment to Liam's well-being. We work together as a team to provide him with stability and support. Ms. Blake studied her. That's very diplomatic, but not exactly informative. I'm not sure what else to say, Raina replied honestly. Colin, Mr. Mercer, hired me to care for his son. That remains my primary focus, but yes, over time we've become closer. Romantically involved? Raina hesitated. Our priority has been the children. Any personal feelings have been secondary to that. Ms. Blake made a note on her pad. I'd like to observe you with Liam now, in a natural setting, perhaps during lunch. The day continued with Ms. Blake watching their interactions, taking notes and occasionally asking questions. By dinner time, Raina was exhausted from the constant scrutiny, and even the children seemed subdued. After Ms. Blake left, promising to return in 2 days, Colin found Raina in the kitchen cleaning up from dinner. How do you think it went? She asked anxiously. It's hard to tell with Judith, Colin admitted. I've known her professionally. She's respected in family court. She's thorough but fair. She asked a lot of questions about us, Raina said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Me too. Colin leaned against the counter. I told her the truth, that I care deeply for you, that you've been instrumental in Liam's progress, and that our relationship has developed naturally and respectfully. Raina smiled weakly. I was less articulate. I think I babbled. You were perfect, Colin assured her. Just keep being yourself. That's all any of us can do now. The next 2 days passed, in a blur of tension and pretended normalcy. Miss Blake returned as promised, this time focusing more on the children. She spoke with Liam privately for over an hour, then observed him playing with Maya. She interviewed Margaret and even Liam's schoolteacher by phone. By the time she left, Raina had no idea which way her recommendation might go. The custody hearing was scheduled for Monday morning, just 3 days away. What happens if Diana wins? Raina asked Colin that night after the children were asleep. They sat in the living room, a careful distance between them in case Ms. Blake had installed cameras, which Raina knew was paranoid, but couldn't help worrying about anyway. She won't, Colin said, but his voice lacked conviction. If she did, it would likely be a temporary arrangement while a full custody evaluation is conducted. Weeks, maybe months. The thought of Liam being taken away for months made Raina's heartache. He'd be devastated. Yes. Colin stared into his glass of scotch. Liam hasn't spent more than a weekend at Diana's since Caroline died. She's a stranger to him now, despite being his aunt. What can we do? Colin looked up, determination hardening his features. We can make sure the judge understands exactly what Diana is doing, using a child as a weapon in her personal vendetta against me. But as the weekend progressed, Raina could see Colin's confidence wavering. He spent hours with his lawyers, preparing for every possible argument Diana might make. He was short-tempered from stress, snapping at Margaret and barely sleeping. Liam noticed the change in his father. On Sunday afternoon, he tugged on Raina's sleeve and wrote, "Dad is scared." He's worried about some grown-up stuff, Raina explained, gently. But everything's going to be okay. Liam frowned and wrote, "About court tomorrow? I heard Margaret talking. Raina should have known they couldn't keep this from him." The household staff knew what was happening, and children had a way of discovering secrets. "Yes, about court," she admitted. "Your Aunt Diana thinks you should spend more time with her." Liam's face grew troubled. He wrote rapidly, I want to stay with you and Dad and Maya." "I know, sweetheart. And your dad is doing everything he can to make sure that happens." Liam hesitated, then wrote, "Can I help?" Raina hugged him close. "Just keep being your wonderful self. That's all any of us can do." That night, Raina couldn't sleep. She paced her room, trying to quiet her anxious thoughts. What if Diana won? What if Liam was taken away? What if this beautiful, fragile family they'd created was torn apart before it had really begun? Around midnight, she decided to get some tea to calm her nerves. As she passed Liam's room, she noticed a faint light under the door. Concerned, she knocked softly. "Liam, are you awake?" There was no response, but she heard movement inside. Gently, she opened the door. Liam was sitting at his desk in pajamas, a small desk lamp illuminating his workspace. Papers and crayons were scattered around him. "Sweetie, it's very late," Raina said. "You should be sleeping." Liam turned, his expression determined. He handed her a sheet of paper. It was a letter written in his careful handwriting. "Dear Judge, my name is Liam Mercer. I am 8 years old. I don't talk because my mum died and it made me too sad, but I can write. I don't want to live with Aunt Diana. I want to stay with my dad and Raina and Maya. They are my family now." Raina helps me. "She doesn't make me talk. She just sits with me and reads to me and makes good food. Maya is my best friend. Dad smiles again because of them. Please don't take me away from my family. From Liam Mercer." Tears filled Raina's eyes as she read. "Oh." Liam dumped. The boy watched her anxiously, then wrote on his pad, "Will it help?" "I think it might," Raina said, her voice choked with emotion. "This is very brave of you." Liam nodded solemnly, then unexpectedly stood and wrapped his arms around her waist, hugging her tightly. Raina held him close, her heart full of love for this child who'd endured so much. "Everything will be okay," she whispered, hoping with all her heart that it was true. The next morning, the house was a flurry of activity. Colin dressed in his most conservative suit, his expression grave. Raina helped get the children ready for school, knowing Margaret would stay with them while she and Colin went to court. "Good luck," Margaret said as they prepared to leave, her usual stern demeanor softened by genuine concern. "That boy needs you both." In the car, Colin reached for Raina's hand. "Whatever happens today, remember that we're in this together." "I know," Raina said, squeezing his hand. "Colin, there's something you should see." She handed him Liam's letter, watching as emotion transformed his face. "He wrote this last night," she explained. "He wants to help." Colin read the letter twice, blinking rapidly to hold back tears. I didn't know he could express himself like this." "He's been listening and observing all along," Raina said softly. "He sees everything." Colin carefully folded the letter and put it in his breast pocket, close to his heart. "Thank you for showing me this. It changes everything." The family court was intimidating, all polished wood and hushed voices. Colin's lawyers met them in the hallway, going over last-minute details. Raina spotted Diana across the lobby, immaculately dressed in a navy suit, her blonde hair pulled back severely. She was speaking intently to a distinguished-looking older man, her attorney, Raina assumed, Mr. Mercer. Judith Blake approached them, nodding professionally. "Ms. Ellis." "Miss Blake," Colin greeted her. "Have you completed your report?" "Yes, I'll be presenting it to Judge Harmon shortly." Her expression revealed nothing about its contents. As they entered the courtroom, Raina felt a wave of anxiety. She was just a witness here, not a party to the case, but it felt like her entire future was at stake. The hearing began with formal introductions. Judge Harmon, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, listened as the attorneys outlined their positions. Diana's lawyer painted Colin as a workaholic who had failed to help his son process his grief, who had brought a stranger into the home to replace the boy's mother, and who was now romantically involved with that caregiver to the detriment of his son's emotional well-being. Colin's attorney countered with evidence of Liam's progress under Raina's care, statements from his therapist and teachers, and documentation of Colin's involvement in his son's life. He portrayed Diana as an interfering relative who had filed false reports with CPS out of personal animosity. Through it all, Diana sat rigid and righteous, occasionally whispering to her attorney. Colin remained calm, though Raina could see the tension in his jaw. Finally, Ms. Blake was called to present her findings. Raina held her breath as the guardian began to speak. "Your Honor, I've conducted a thorough assessment of Liam Mercer's home environment, including multiple interviews with all household members and observations of their interactions. I've also reviewed Liam's school records, therapy notes, and medical history." Ms. Blake paused, looking directly at the judge. "Based on this assessment, I find no evidence that Colin Mercer is an unfit parent. On the contrary, he has provided his son with stability, appropriate medical and psychological care, and a supportive home environment during an extremely difficult time. Raina felt a surge of hope, but Ms. Blake wasn't finished. Regarding the presence of Ms. Ellis and her daughter in the household, I find that they have had a positive impact on Liam's development. Ms. Ellis has established appropriate boundaries while creating a nurturing environment. The relationship between Ms. Ellis and Mr. Mercer, while clearly evolving beyond employer-employee, has not negatively affected their care of Liam. Diana's face had grown increasingly flushed as Ms. Blake spoke. Her attorney leaned over to whisper something, but she shook her head sharply. Furthermore, Ms. Blake continued, I found evidence that Mrs. Reynolds' involvement has been more harmful than helpful. Her questioning of Liam about his father's relationship with Ms. Ellis caused the child significant distress, and there is strong circumstantial evidence connecting her to false reports filed with Child Protective Services. Judge Harmon nodded, thoughtfully. Thank you, Miss Blake. Does Liam himself have any input on this matter? Colin stood. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I have a letter written by my son last night, expressing his wishes. The judge accepted the letter, reading it carefully. Her expression softened almost imperceptibly. I see. And has Ms. Blake reviewed this letter? No, Your Honor, Colin admitted. Liam wrote it without prompting, and we only discovered it last night. Judge Harmon handed the letter to Ms. Blake, who read it quickly and nodded. This is consistent with my observations of Liam's attachments and preferences, Your Honor. After that, things moved quickly. The judge questioned both Colin and Diana directly, her incisive questions revealing the holes in Diana's accusations. When Diana insisted that Liam needed his mother's family in his life, Judge Harmon pointed out that supervised visitation would accomplish that without disrupting the child's primary home. Finally, Judge Harmon delivered her ruling. Based on the evidence presented, including Ms. Blake's report and Liam's own statement, I find no basis for emergency custody. Mrs. Reynolds' petition is denied. Raina nearly collapsed with relief. Colin reached for her hand under the table, squeezing it tightly, but the judge wasn't finished. However, I am concerned about the antagonistic relationship between these adults. Mr. Mercer, Mrs. Reynolds is your late wife's sister and Liam's aunt. Some accommodation should be made for her to maintain a relationship with her nephew. I agree, Your Honor, Colin said immediately. I've never intended to cut Liam off from Caroline's family. I only objected to the manner in which Mrs. Reynolds was interacting with him. Judge Harmon nodded. Then I will order a visitation schedule once weekly, initially supervised by Ms. Blake, with the possibility of unsupervised visits in the future if all parties can demonstrate appropriate behavior. She fixed Diana with a stern look. Mrs. Reynolds, I strongly caution you against making further unfounded accusations. The court takes a dim view of using custody proceedings as a weapon in personal disputes. Diana's face was pale with anger, but she nodded stiffly. Court is adjourned, Judge Harmon declared, rising from her seat. Outside the courtroom, Colin's lawyers congratulated him on the favorable outcome. Diana swept past without a word, her back rigid with defeat. It's over, Colin said, the tension finally leaving his face. Let's go home. The drive back to the house was quiet, both of them processing the events of the morning. Do you think Diana will accept the judge's decision? Raina asked finally. Colin sighed. Eventually. She's stubborn but not stupid. She knows she crossed a line with the false CPS reports. And the visitation? Will be good for Liam, Colin said firmly. Diana's behavior aside, she is Caroline's sister. She loved Caroline, and she loves Liam in her own way. With proper boundaries, that relationship can be positive. Raina nodded, admiring his generosity despite everything Diana had put them through. You're a good man, Colin Mercer. He smiled, reaching for her hand. I'm trying to be. For Liam, for you. When they arrived home, Margaret was waiting anxiously in the entryway. Well, what happened? We won, Colin said simply. Where are the children? In the playroom. I kept them home from school today, thought it best under the circumstances. Colin and Raina found Liam and Maya building an elaborate castle out of Legos. When they looked up and saw the adults' smiling faces, they knew immediately. You get to stay, Maya exclaimed, jumping up to hug her mother. Liam ran to his father, who knelt to embrace him. The boy pulled back and looked at Colin questioningly. Yes, buddy. The judge read your letter. It helped a lot, Colin assured him. You get to stay right here with all of us. Liam's smile was radiant. He turned to Raina, wrapping his arms around her waist. She held him close, her heart full. That evening, they celebrated with pizza and ice cream. The relief in the household was palpable, laughter coming more easily than it had in weeks. After dinner, Colin suggested a movie night, and soon all four of them were cuddled on the couch, Maya and Liam wrapped in blankets, watching an animated film. Raina glanced at Colin, finding him already looking at her. His arm was around her, shoulders holding her close against his side. It felt right. It felt like family. Later, after the children were asleep, Colin and Raina sat in the garden, looking at the stars. What happens now? Raina asked softly. Colin took her hand. Now we build a life together, if that's what you want. It is, Raina said without hesitation. But there's still so much to figure out. My role here, what to tell the children, how to handle Diana. We'll figure it out together, Colin promised. One day at a time. He leaned in and kissed her, a kiss full of promise and possibility. When they parted, Raina rested her head on his shoulder, content in a way she hadn't been in years. 2 weeks later, life had settled into a new normal. The CPS investigation had been officially closed, with a formal letter of apology to Raina. Diana had attended her first supervised visit with Liam, which had gone better than expected, perhaps because the clear boundaries set by the court had actually relieved some of her anxiety. And most surprisingly, Liam had started speech therapy, his own idea, communicated through one of his notes. I think I might want to try talking again soon. It was a small step, but a significant one. The therapist had warned them not to expect too much too quickly, but just the fact that Liam was considering it showed how far he'd come. One Saturday morning, Raina woke early and slipped downstairs to start breakfast. She was surprised to find Liam already in the kitchen, sitting at the island with a drawing pad. Good morning, she said, smiling. You're up early. He nodded, continuing to draw intently. What are you working on? Raina asked, starting the coffee maker. Liam held up his pad. It was another drawing of their family, the 4 stick figures. That had become a recurring theme in his art, but this time there was something new. Speech bubbles like in a comic book, and in his speech bubble Liam had written one word, home. Raina's heart swelled. That's beautiful, Liam. He nodded, then turned to a blank page and wrote, When you came here, it was just for me. But you helped Dad too. And now we're all fixed. Tears pricked at Raina's eyes. Oh, sweetheart, I don't think any of us were broken, just hurting. And sometimes hurting people can help each other heal. Liam considered this, then wrote, Is that what love is? Raina sat beside him, touched by his insight. I think that's a big part of it, yes. Helping each other heal, being there through the hard times. Liam smiled and added another note. Then, we all love each other. Yes, Raina agreed, her voice soft with emotion. We do. They were still sitting there when Colin came downstairs, Maya trailing behind him in her unicorn pajamas. Morning, Colin said, kissing the top of Raina's head before ruffling Liam's hair. What are my favorite people up to? Liam showed his father the drawing, pointing to the speech bubble. Colin studied it, his expression growing serious. Home, he read aloud. Is that how you feel, buddy? Like this is home? Liam nodded firmly, then pointed to all 4 figures in the drawing. All of us together, Colin said, understanding. That's what makes it home. Maya climbed onto the stool next to Liam. Can I see? She studied the drawing, then said matter-of-factly, We should all sign it, like a family picture. Liam immediately offered her his crayon and she carefully wrote Maya under her stick figure. Colin and Raina followed suit, adding their names to their representations. When they were done, Liam took the drawing back and added a final touch, a heart surrounding all 4 names. Then he looked up at the adults, a question in his eyes. "It's perfect," Raina assured him. "Should we put it on the refrigerator?" Liam shook his head and wrote, "For my room, so I can see it every day." As he carried the drawing carefully upstairs, Maya following close behind to help him find the perfect spot, Colin wrapped his arms around Raina from behind. "He's right, you know," he murmured against her hair. "You came for the child, but you've given all of us a home." Raina turned in his arms, her eyes shining with tears and joy. "We gave it to each other." Colin kissed her tenderly, then rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Raina Ellis." "I love you too," she whispered, her heart full to bursting. From upstairs came the sound of children's laughter, Maya's loud and boisterous, and alongside it a softer sound they'd never heard before. Dayboy's quiet chuckle, rusty from disuse but unmistakable. Liam was laughing. Colin and Raina exchanged a look of wonder and hope. There would be challenges ahead, Diana to manage, 2 households to blend, a boy learning to speak again after years of silence. But in that moment, with the sound of Liam's laughter floating down the stairs, Raina knew they could face anything together. The woman who had come for the child had found so much more, a family, a home, a love that had healed them all. And as Colin took her hand and led her upstairs to join the children, Raina felt a perfect contentment settle in her heart. This was where she belonged. This was home.